Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning in to one of our talks today. I'm so excited to be joined by the fantastic Julianne Nicholson to talk all about the HBO series Mare of Easttown. And I wanted to start by talking about your work with Susan Hegarty, who's the dialect coach on the series, because I thought that the choice of dialect that you made was so interesting. And I know that she recorded a lot of different people with stronger accents, more nuanced, softer accents, and was really, really interested in the collaboration between the two of you and why it was that you landed on that kind of like softer version that you did in the end and what that said to you about your character.
Well, first I'll say I worked with Suzanne Selby.
Oh,
So I
sorry.
don't. So Suzanne Haggerty might be who Kate worked with because I know she was a Suzanne also. So, but I worked with Suzanne Selby, who worked with the cast at large, and she was incredible and so thorough. And when we first met, first of all, I didn't even know what the Philadelphia accent was or Delco. I mean, there's so many versions of this accent. But growing up outside of Boston, I felt like I had it didn't mean it still was a nightmare. It was really, really hard, but at least I had an understanding of there being many versions of the same accent. And even when when I did Black Mass, even though I'm from there and can do a Boston accent, because that was how I spoke for 15 years, there's still, because I lived in New York for so long, certain sounds change in your mouth, like the O in particular or the R. Anyways, but I felt like it was very interesting when I was just sort of listening for Black Mass. Like, you can have different versions of the same accent in one house because it depends on your life experience, where you work, who you're surrounded by, who your friends are, how old you are, have you traveled? There's all these things that inform how a person speaks. So that was actually a comfort to me to know that there's not just one right way to do it. And I thought Suzanne came with all these different recordings of people that she had spoken with. And so I had said to her, I wanted to go a little bit more subtle, as you say, a little bit softer, because that's when you're walking around Philadelphia or Delco, that's what it sounds like. Not everybody sounds the same. Part of it was also just like fear-based. And I was like, oh God, if I go big, is it just going to be too much? And I didn't want it to be, something they spoofed onto SNL or anything like that, which I thought was which was the hilarious. I feel like, oh, we made it. I love that. Murder Dirter was so funny. Yeah, so it was challenging, but Suzanne was amazing. And to have a sort of through line to sort of listen to sort of land in every time. And also Suzanne, we worked before every scene. I would check in with Suzanne and we would go over the dialogue of that scene, and I would just make notes on my script, like certain words. I would just underline ones that I had to just be aware of. And not the idea is to like not hit it too hard so it takes people out of it, but that it's sort of incorporated in how I was talking anyway.
Yeah. And then in the way that the series was filmed, you had Craig Zobel who was directing every single episode. So in essence, it kind of feels like one very long film broken down into chapters, which is a huge gift to have, I imagine, given the emotional trajectory of your character. But then on the flip side, because you're filming all 7 episodes at the same time, the emotional tracking probably becomes a lot more complex. And I heard that Kate was always very specific about making sure that everybody knew exactly where they were in a scene before you went into filming. So what was that process that you all went through in terms of the emotional tracking and just making sure that everybody was on the same page with where they were at before you went into any of, particularly the much deeper emotional scenes?
So that was the challenge, skipping around like that. As you say, it is wonderful to know the whole story before you start. But then it is, we're filming some of the scenes from episode 7 in the first month or 2 of shooting, and then vice versa, we were shooting some of the scenes from the first episode later on. And Kate was crucial in that. She had this big binder with all the scripts, and there was Post-its and highlighters and notes all along, and it was very important for all of us. And she was leading the charge as like number 1 on the call sheet and executive producer. And I think just how she works, that we were all like clear before every scene. And we talked about it before we started filming to I can't remember what scene number it was, but I think it was, we all decided, at least for John and Laurie and Mare, like, okay, when does Laurie know what? We had to track by scene number, like, okay, after scene this, she knows this much. And then it's after this other scene, she knows everything. Doesn't wear her wedding ring after which scene. Like there were certain notes and details from scene to scene. Like, so then it's like, okay, we refer to that. If it comes before that, we know, okay, she has to wear her wedding ring and she thinks that he's having an affair, but not, you know, with Aaron or whatever the thing was. So it was definitely used your brain in a different way.
And in the relationship and friendship and with the history between Laurie and Mare, you really capture a lot of small moments that tell us so much about their history. Like when Laurie walks into the house and Mare and her mother are arguing, you know that she's walked into the room when they've been going at each other before because she just stands there. She doesn't engage with it. She doesn't try to shut it down. She waits till they're done and then has her conversation essentially. And was that something where you were all consciously thinking about what are the smaller moments that we can represent this history, or did it really just come through from the writing and the scripts and the details in there?
I think that largely came just through the writing. I think Brad just saw this whole thing and everybody else is sort of on board for the ride. But I think it was all in the writing. And then, you know, we've all been doing it for a while, you know, me, Kate, and Jean. So, and also I'm such huge fans of both of theirs that there was like a trust that we all were going to arrive into the scene knowing where we were each as a character were coming from and knowing that history. And also I felt like there was just a level of relaxation amongst the three of us that really went a long way towards illustrating their history.
Yeah. And I love the language and the dialogue and the detail that Brad creates in the scripts, but also that from the sounds of it, that he was very open to, you know, interpretation. You guys are living in these characters, what feels right for you. And one of those pivotal moments being when Laurie shows up at the courthouse for John and he asks her to take in his illegitimate child, and she actually doesn't say anything, but that still communicates everything. And I heard that that was originally written with just 2 or 3 lines of dialogue and that you actually felt like it was more important to strip it away. And what was it about that scene where you actually felt like you could communicate so much more by stripping away some of the dialogue? And were there other moments where you did that as well?
I feel like, first of all, it's so amazing to work with a director who allows for that and who encourages that even. And that in no way, I mean, you know, 99% of the time I'm doing exactly what Brad has written because he's just so good and such a naturalistic writer and knew that world and these characters so well. But in a moment like that, sometimes it feels like, and this comes from just acting for a long time now, I feel like sometimes you give away too much with words. And I feel like sometimes if you are, obviously you're not having that experience, but if you can imagine what that experience is and what that feels like, people can see that for themselves. And sometimes it's okay if it doesn't look like what people think that would be, because not everybody has the same reaction to everything, right? So it's kind of fun to be asked to sort of watch and have your own experience of what that person is going through.
Yeah. I also thought it was a wonderful choice that you looked at Laurie having a secret as something that you didn't need to play to, because in life, when someone's keeping a secret, they're trying to keep it inside and they're not kind of secretly expressing it on the side. Is that something that you always approach a lot of elements like that in other characters? You know, say you're playing another character that's keeping something inside, that you always think about it that way? Or was it something that you specifically came across for Laurie in this instance?
I think I've probably thought about it before and think that's just like, you know, when you're playing drunk, like whenever you're drunk, all you're trying to do is act not drunk. Like but I think obviously with Laurie, it's, you know, it's the biggest secret any character I've played has ever held, I think. So it was definitely, you know, worked in this role. But I think that's interesting to me. Yeah. You know, watching people, we just have no idea what's going on with people, actually. And that's really interesting to me.
Yeah. It makes for a great 7 episodes.
Yeah.
I also think that one of the things that you do so fantastically in your performance, you know, we have those slightly bigger emotional moments towards the end, but there's so many instances where you're almost playing against the emotion, and it comes across as much more powerful because of everything that she's holding in and the fact that you can feel the weight of everything as it's gradually building within her. And so I was very, very curious about, you know, that particular approach and finding different ways in which to play against the emotion almost.
Well, I think it's more of that thing. Like if you watch a documentary and someone gets overcome with feeling, all they're trying to do is shut it down. You don't want to, no one wants to really reveal themselves in that way. It's too vulnerable making. Or they think that, you know, no one wants to see it, or for any number of reasons, we try to keep those things to ourselves. And I also just thought that's who Laurie was. She's quite stoic. You know, she's from that part of the world. They don't have a lot of money. She's the mother of two. She has a job. One of them has Down syndrome. Her husband, you know, they haven't had the always smoothest sailing relationship. But there's also something very no nonsense about her, and it's not about, you know, flaming fanning the flames, or, you know, being dramatic. It's more about like, you know, put your head down and keep going, find the joys where you can in the day to day, but like keep going.
And there's so much in that friendship and the support system that she gives Mare, particularly early on. And, you know, that no nonsense thing that you were saying, where Mare's trying to push everyone around her away. And Laurie's the person that's just like, I see what you're doing, and that's absolutely not going to work on me. You know, I'm still here for you. And so how did you set about thinking about the type of support system that you wanted her to be for Mare in those earlier episodes?
She just felt like, I just felt like it was such a beautiful friendship. And I just love that idea of knowing someone so deeply for so long. And how you don't have to react to everything. I feel like Laurie knows Mare's heart, and Mare knows Laurie's heart, and everything else is fine. And she's not going to get riled because she sees Mare, you know, through her whole life, spinning and, you know, not necessarily playing nice. But I think Mare has revealed to Laurie over time, you know, her quieter moments and her softer self. And so Laurie always sees that. So she doesn't have to get taken into the drama of it.
And to that point as well, and going back to what you were saying earlier about, obviously you and Kate have both been doing this for so many years, and there's a lot of things that just come very intrinsically. How in depth did you want to get with each other about the history of this friendship, the relationship? What did it look like when they were growing up next door to each other as kids? What did it look like they went in school together? Or was it something where you were both kind of off doing your own individual work and really finding it through the scripts, and then it came together when you were filming?
I think all of that, actually. I think all of those. I think we both trusted, you know, just knowing each other, our own inbuilt history, because we've known each other for close to 18 years. So seeing people in, you know, different times of their lives, so having that already there was huge, you know. And then we did talk about them going to elementary school together, being there for each other at their weddings, at the birth of their children, like being the first to hold, you know, each other's babies. And we definitely talked about, and knowing, you know, her mom, Helen, being like my second mom, and vice versa. And then I'm sure we both drew from our imaginations and our own experience as well. So I think it was a little bit of all three of those things.
Overall, with every relationship that you're able to bring to screen as well, it has that small town, small community, very tight knit area history as well. And do you find that that allowed you to make even the smallest of interactions with another character much deeper because there is such a storied history with every single person that she's interacting with?
Yes, I think that also is credit to Brad Inglesby, the writer. Like, he just wrote this place that felt so authentic, and that from the first episode, you feel like, oh yeah, these people have known each other their whole lives, and they will know each other their whole lives. And so when you have that as the grounding point, then all those things become more meaningful.
Yeah. And then I also wanted to talk about the costumes. I think the costume department did such a phenomenal job. And I know that a lot of that stemmed from pictures that they would take, just hanging out in the area, buying a lot of secondhand clothing. But particularly when you look at Laurie's outfits, there's stories that it tells. Like the fact that she shows up at the courthouse in the same jeans and the same jacket that she's worn in other scenes tells you she never had any intention of going inside. She's come to show her face, but she's not going to go into the room. And so were there a lot of different ways in which the costumes that she was wearing and the fact that they were so worn in told you a lot about her?
Yeah, I think just looking at how worn in they all felt, and also, you know, repeating costumes feels important to feel like someone's actual closet and not, you know, a costume closet. And just to sort of practical, it's about comfort and grabbing what's close, especially towards the end when it's all sort of falling apart, where it's like she's not, I didn't want her to feel like she was losing it. I didn't want it to feel like she's, you know, not caring at all, but she's only caring just enough to as far as like what she's presenting.
And then I also was interested in your relationship and dynamic with Cameron, who plays Ryan. And, you know, he speaks very effusively about how comfortable and how safe you made him feel on set, particularly when you were doing the more harrowing scenes together. And so how did you set about creating that dynamic and that rapport with him?
First of all, he's such a nice guy, such a nice kid. I loved him. I loved his mom, and Cassie, who played Maura, my daughter, her too, and her mom, Jeanette. So normally when I work with kids, I try to get in touch with a parent first, just to say hi, and I can't wait to meet you, and I'm so excited, and just to sort of start a relationship before we get there, and also to try to find out a couple of their interests so that I can come with a present or two, something to do on set because there's so much downtime, or just something to say, like, you know, just because I am interested. I want to know who they are. I'm curious. And then we went, Cameron and Jill and I went out to dinner, and on set, our chairs were usually near each other. And we just talk, and having that, you know, having a son his age just opened up, you know, what we can talk about. Because I live with someone his age, a little bit younger, but. And then, I mean, he's such a sweet guy, caring, funny, open, humble, that he was just an easy person to be with. And it makes me so happy to hear that he felt that way with me. That means a lot to me, that he is comfort.
And then jumping into some of the more spoiler aspects that come later in the season, I wanted to talk about the interrogation scene when they go down to the police station and he's telling them everything that happened that night, because it sounds like that was actually originally written a little bit more as a voiceover versus him delivering the dialogue in the moment. And when that shifted to him actually telling them in person, did that alter or change anything that you were initially intending for your performance in that scene?
No, that did not change what I was doing at all, because poor him, because sometimes it's written as VO, but it could very easily be the scene, you know. So, and I know that because I've had that happen, and I guess I don't remember it, but I guess in his mind, or maybe an earlier draft or I think it probably said voiceover. I think he got nervous, you know, because he didn't think he was going to be, but I didn't sense that at all. It was only because he told me that I knew that. I would never have guessed that from his performance. Or he's very even keeled also, just in the day to day and in the scenes. And I mean, that must have been a hurdle for him, but I had no sense of that whatsoever, that he did a beautiful job.
And in that scene where he runs into the house and he just says, "It's Mare and she knows," and then it's the two of you for just those few moments. It's honestly one of the most impactful scenes of the entire season. And so I wanted to ask about how the two of you really found what you wanted the emotional dynamic and everything that they're saying to each other in those moments of silence with each other to be.
So that scene, I believe, was written as she's like doing something in the other room. He comes in and says what he says. And and it was written as they're lying down on the couch. And I'm sure we could have done that, but I had this idea that um, my son still sits on my lap, even though he's like a teen, preteen then, preteen now. And it's so sweet. And I love it that he still wants to sit on my lap. And it's because it's this age where there's still a boy, like 1 foot in boyhood and 1 foot in young adulthood, like young manhood. So it's like this really beautiful, like sweet spot of someone's life. And so I asked Jill, his mom, Cameron's mom, I was like, does Cameron still sit on your lap? And a year, whenever we filmed, maybe he's not now. I don't want to give anything away. Sorry, Cam, if your friends are watching. Does he still sit on your lap? And she said, yeah. And so I asked Cam, like, what are you comfortable with that? What about if we try you sitting on my lap? And he was up for anything. He was so game. And we asked Brad and Craig, and they were like, yes, great, let's try that. And it just felt right. And there happened to be that little ottoman there, whatever. So it was very natural and easy to do that. And it's just such a heartbreaking moment. It was to film also.
Yeah. And the entire show is so full of complexities and very much, about the gray areas of life. And even when we learn what happened that evening, and it's a horrific accident that happened, there's still some interesting dynamics with the character of Ryan and the fact that he was violent towards a classmate and he still went and got a gun and used it as a way to threaten another young girl. And so it doesn't, even though it was an accident, it doesn't fully absolve maybe some of the other behavior that was there. And did you feel like Laurie allowed herself to consciously think about those smaller flags? Or did you feel like she was just so focused on everything that she's doing, her love and protection of her family, that she wasn't allowing herself to step back and look at some of those things as much?
Yeah, no, she didn't at all. And I'm sort of, you're right. She's, of course, the fighting at school did cross her mind and feel like a red flag, but I think she was so just like focused on keeping him safe and blaming John that she was not necessarily thinking about what it means to even threaten someone with a gun and how extreme that is.
Mm-hmm. And then that final scene between you and Kate when she comes to your house, and at first all you're doing is saying, "Do you want tea?" and then turning your back and just holding everything in. And then that moment, that instant where you just crumble on the floor. I know you've mentioned that you were a little apprehensive about that scene, and especially just the ability to make it really work and to be convincing, but that it was the trust in everyone around you. Was that something where you were able to find it on the first take, or did you have to kind of play around a little bit? Because you have to completely absorb every muscle in your body physically in that moment for it to work and for the drop to actually come across in the way that it does and shift your entire performance from this really heightened physical tension to such looseness in just an instant.
First of all, what a beautiful description of that. Thank you. We didn't talk much about it. And yes, I was petrified because I feel like, that just felt like, how do you fall to the floor and not in overly dramatic way. But I think we found it pretty, I was like, and they were open. They're like, if it doesn't work, well, they were so wonderful about, we just want to do the thing that feels right for you both. And actually we did it once and it was like, oh, yeah, okay, so Brad, you were right. It works. And I think it was just such a relief for Laurie to finally let go of everything and to trust that her friend was there with those loving, strong arms to catch it all, that it made sense and was actually kind of beautiful.
Yeah. And with the fact that you have taken on so many stunningly complex characters and roles and performances throughout your career, what did you find were the unique learning curves and challenges in playing Laurie on Mare?
I guess for me, it was that trust in that I can trust sometimes. It's going to sound funny, but like doing nothing, like the small moment, it's not doing nothing, of course, that's too simple a way to say it, but like that those moments build, those moments add up to something more. And it's just sort of, as we were talking about before, not feeling like you have to show everything or that you have to indicate everything, but that just the actions add up.
Yeah. Well, I feel like along with every other person that's watched the show, I was just completely blown away by everything that you did with this character and this performance. And thank you so much for sharing so much about this, Julianne.
Thank you. Thank you very much.